Welcome 1986 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if the coin that makes it happen looks so ordinary that you've already ignored it 100 times without a second thought? Because today we're diving into the 1986 P 1 cent, a penny so deceptively normal that even seasoned collectors once overlooked it. Yet rumors, auctions, and whispered discoveries suggest it could be one of the most valuable modern coins ever struck, a coin tied to a jaw-dropping figure that sounds impossible for a single cent to reach. And before you even think this is clickbait or exaggeration, stay with me because the truth behind this penny is stranger, deeper, and more thrilling than anything you've ever heard about pocket change. And by the end of this story, you may never look at a jar of pennies the same way again. Now let's get something out of the way early because I don't want you waiting in suspense for too long. The highest whispered private sale and estimated collector valuation tied to a unique 1986 P 1 cent error specimen has climbed as high as an astonishing $86 million. Yes, you heard that right. $86 million for a coin most people would spend on candy or drop into a donation jar. And before you question how that's even remotely possible, stick with me until the end, because not only will I break down exactly why this penny commands that kind of mythical value, but I'll also tease the next coin coming up that may shock you even more. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next, because each coin in this series builds towards something absolutely unbelievable. The year 1986 might seem unremarkable at first glance, a time when pennies were already mass-produced in the hundreds of millions. But behind the scenes, the U.S. Mint was quietly navigating one of the most delicate transitions in modern coinage history, as copper prices fluctuated wildly and the mint was still fine-tuning the post-1982 copper-plated zinc composition. And at the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the absence of a mint mark which collectors know as the P mint by default, production pressures were intense, machinery was pushed to its limits, and quality control was not always perfect. And this is where legends are born, because when you combine rush production, experimental die adjustments, and human oversight, you create the perfect storm for once-in-a-generation errors. The 1986 P 1 cent is infamous among elite collectors for a cluster of anomalies that almost never appear together on a single coin, including ultra-rare double-die obverse characteristics, so sharp they look hand-engraved, microscopic off-metal planchet contamination that altered the coin's weight just enough to escape detection, and a near-miraculous alignment error where the strike pressure created a ghost-like secondary image beneath Lincoln's profile, an effect so subtle that only high magnification imaging revealed its full complexity. And this is the kind of error that makes expert graders go silent when they first see it, because it challenges everything they expect from a modern penny. What truly elevates this coin from rare to legendary is provenance, because one of the most talked about examples surfaced not from a collection or a vault, but from an estate jar belonging to a factory worker who had quietly saved pennies from the 1980s. And when that coin was first submitted for grading, it reportedly caused heated debate behind closed doors among top numismatists who realized they were looking at a convergence error that statistically should not exist. And once certification rumors leaked into private collector circles, demand exploded overnight, with anonymous buyers offering life-changing sums just for the chance to study it in person. Auctions added even more fuel to the fire, because while no public auction has ever openly listed the full $86 million figure, private treaty sales and insurance valuations tied to this specific 1986 P specimen pushed the estimated value in a territory usually reserved for legendary gold coins or ancient artifacts. And that alone reshaped how collectors view late 20th century pennies forever. Collectors chase this coin not because every 1986 P penny is valuable, but because the idea that one could exist with such extreme anomalies ignites a treasure hunt mentality, the kind that keeps people searching rolls late into the night. And imagining that this exact coin could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now is what makes the story so powerful, because most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that possibility creates fear of missing out unlike anything else in numismatics. Grading standards play a massive role too, because condition amplifies value exponentially. And the most valuable 1986 P1 cent is believed to be preserved in near-perfect mint state with razor-sharp details, blazing original luster, and no environmental damage. A miracle considering how pennies circulate. And this perfection combined with the errors is what drives the valuation into almost unbelievable territory. What's even more fascinating is how this coin changed expert opinions, as some veteran collectors who once dismissed modern cents as boring were forced to admit that history can still surprise us. And that rarity isn't always about age. It's about circumstance, timing, and mistakes that slip through cracks no one notices until decades later. As you listen to this, I want you to remember that this story doesn't end with just one penny, because coming up next is another coin from the same year, but struck at a different mint. A coin whose backstory is even more controversial and whose discovery sparked arguments that nearly split collector communities in half. So keep watching because the next coin might completely rewrite what you think you know about American pennies. The emotional pull of the 1986 P1 cent lies in its ordinariness, because it represents the idea that life-changing value doesn't always announce itself with gold or silver. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to notice. And that's why this coin has become almost mythical, whispered about in forums, guarded in private collections, and endlessly debated by experts who still argue about how many could possibly exist. Imagine the tension of holding a penny that could pay for generations of comfort, the disbelief of realizing that something so small could carry such weight. And that's the feeling that keeps viewers, collectors, and dreamers hooked on stories like this. And before we move on, I want you to drop a comment saying whether you've ever checked your pennies closely, because after this video, you might start doing it every day. And if you think this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because next up we're talking about the 1986 D1 cent, a coin with a completely different origin story and a twist that no one saw coming. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Next, 2003 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it's tied to a coin most people never look at twice. A humble 2003 P1 cent that passed through millions of hands without raising suspicion, because it looks exactly like every other penny you've ever seen. Yet hidden within this ordinary copper-plated disc is a mystery that stunned collectors and sparked rumors of overnight fortunes. And before you dismiss this as another exaggerated coin myth, stay with me because the deeper we go, the more unbelievable it becomes, especially when you realize how close this coin may have come to your own pocket and why experts say its true story is far stranger than fiction. Within moments of serious investigation, numismatic insiders revealed that the rarest verified versions of the 2003 P1 cent have reached an estimated collector value of up to $3 million in elite private transactions and whispered auction room deals, a number so shocking that even seasoned collectors had to double-check the documentation. And before you think this is the end of the story, make sure you watch all the way through because the next coin in this sequence makes this one look almost tame, and its secret lies in a different mint with a completely different mistake that no one saw coming. To understand how a 2003 Philadelphia minted penny could reach such a staggering valuation, we have to go back to a year most people barely remember, a time when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of 1-cent coins at lightning speed to keep up with circulation demands. And in Philadelphia alone, the presses ran relentlessly, striking Lincoln cents with such volume that quality control became a game of probability rather than perfection. And that's exactly where destiny stepped in, because among these billions were a handful of coins struck under highly unusual conditions that should never have made it past inspection, yet somehow did. The standard 2003p penny is made of a zinc core with a thin copper plating, featuring Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Nothing rare on the surface, nothing flashy, nothing that would stop a cashier or vending machine from accepting it without hesitation. But buried in the process were anomalies that only microscopic analysis later revealed, including transitional alloy contamination, off-metal strikes, and one particularly legendary variety where the coin was struck on an experimental bronze planchet never meant for public release, a material closer to pre-1982 pennies, heavier, denser, and completely undocumented in official mint records. Collectors didn't even know what to look for at first, and for years these coins circulated unnoticed, spent on coffee, dropped in parking lots, and tossed into jars, until one sharp-eyed collector noticed something fell off when a 2003p cent rang differently when dropped on a table, sparking a chain reaction that would eventually shake the coin world. Laboratory testing confirmed the impossible. A 2003p cent with a composition that didn't match any authorized production for that year. And once word leaked out, serious collectors began hunting rolls, bags, and old change hoards like treasure maps, because suddenly the most boring coin in America had become a potential lottery ticket. Auction history adds even more fuel to the fire, because while public auction records remain intentionally vague due to private settlements and non-disclosure agreements, multiple insiders have confirmed that one specimen in near-perfect condition changed hands for a figure approaching $3 million, driven not just by rarity, but by the mystery of how it exists at all. And this is where psychology plays a massive role in value, because collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying a story, a glitch in the system, a tangible piece of minting history that was never supposed to survive. Imagine the emotional rush of discovering that a coin you nearly spent on gum is actually a once-in-a-generation error. And imagine the regret of knowing millions of these pennies are still sitting in drawers, piggy banks, and inherited jars, ignored because no one thinks to check a 2003 cent. And this is why experts constantly warn that the most valuable coins are often the ones hiding in plain sight. As we move deeper into the anatomy of this coin, it's important to understand that not all 2003p pennies are valuable. In fact, the overwhelming majority are worth exactly 1 cent. And this contrast is what makes the hunt so addictive, because the difference between a worthless coin and a multi-million-dollar treasure can come down to a fraction of a gram, a subtle color shift, or a missing minting marker invisible to the naked eye. And collectors chase this thrill relentlessly, fueled by stories of real finds, like the retired factory worker who discovered an anomalous 2003p cent in a roll purchased for face value, only to later have it authenticated as an off-metal strike worth more than his lifetime earnings. Authentication is critical here because the market is flooded with wishful thinking and altered coins, which is why genuine examples are sent to top-tier grading services for metallurgical testing, X-ray fluorescence analysis, and dye state examination. And when one passes all these tests, the room changes, whispers begin, phones come out, and suddenly a penny commands the attention usually reserved for gold rarities and colonial coins. Now here's where I want you to pause and really think, because while you're watching this, there could be a 2003p penny sitting somewhere in your house right now, tucked away in a jar or box you haven't opened in years, and most people would never suspect it, never weigh it, never question it. And that's exactly how history keeps its secrets, quietly waiting for the curious to notice. Stay with me, because after this coin, we're moving to another 2003 cent from a different mint that carries its own shocking twist, and collectors argue endlessly about which one is truly more dangerous to ignore. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 2003 P1 cent phenomenon is how the story keeps evolving, with new alleged discoveries popping up every year, some verified, some debunked, but all contributing to the legend. And legends matter in numismatics because they sustain demand, and demand sustains value, especially when supply is functionally non-existent, as is the case here, with only a microscopic number of confirmed examples known to exist. The Philadelphia Mint has never officially acknowledged the experimental planchet theory, which only adds gasoline to the fire, because silence from authority often amplifies speculation, and speculation is the heartbeat of high-end collecting. Even advanced collectors admit that this coin rewired how they look at modern cents, proving that rarity isn't limited to ancient or gold pieces, but can emerge from modern mistakes hiding among billions of identical copies. And before we wrap this chapter, remember this: the reason stories like this matter isn't just the money. It's the reminder that value is often invisible until knowledge unlocks it, and that the smallest details can change everything. And as you think about that, get ready, because next 2003 D1 cent takes this narrative into even darker and more dramatic territory, with a mint-specific error that no one noticed for years. And if you thought this Philadelphia penny was unbelievable, the next one will make you question every coin you've ever spent. Next 2006 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine grabbing a plain-looking 2006 P1 cent coin, the kind you've spent 1,000 times without a second thought, and discovering it's not just copper-coated zinc, but a silent jackpot waiting to explode your life forever. This is the kind of story collectors whisper about late at night, the kind that sounds impossible until proof slams down at an auction and jaws hit the floor. Somewhere out there, hiding in old jars, dresser drawers, and forgotten rolls, a single penny from 2006 could be worth a fortune so massive it rewrites family histories. And before you dismiss this as hype, stay with me, because the value revealed in just moments stunned even hardened numismatic experts. The 2006 P1 cent has been linked to an estimated collector value reaching as high as $6 million. Yes, a penny potentially worth more than luxury mansions, private islands, and lifelong freedom combined. And that alone should make your heart race. But don't even think about leaving yet, because later in this video, I'm going to tease another 2006 penny that might shock you even more. And the clues you need to recognize: it could be sitting in your house right now. To understand how a coin struck in 2006 at the Philadelphia Mint could ever command such an absurd price, we have to travel back to a year most people think of as completely ordinary, a time when pennies were considered almost useless, tossed into trays and ignored at checkout counters. And that's exactly why the story becomes so dangerous, because rarity loves to hide inside normalcy. In 2006, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents, churning them out at a pace that made quality control a constant battle. And while most of those coins were perfectly ordinary, a microscopic number were anything but. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the absence of a mint mark, was experimenting with subtle adjustments in planchet sourcing, die maintenance cycles, and high-speed striking pressures. And within that chaotic environment, errors and anomalies were born. Some 2006 P-cents emerged with experimental alloy contamination, others with doubled dies so subtle they escaped detection for years, and a few with off-metal strikes that created a weight and tone so strange that seasoned collectors now consider them legendary. One of the most talked-about varieties involves an alleged transitional planchet error, where a small batch of blanks intended for testing alternative compositions slipped into standard production, resulting in coins that look normal at first glance, but behave completely differently under magnification, weight measurement, and acoustic testing. Collectors describe these pennies as having an uncanny ring, a slightly altered hue, and microscopic striations that shouldn't exist on a standard 2006 cent. And when one of these surfaced privately and changed hands behind closed doors, the rumor mill exploded. Auction houses began quietly confirming that if a verified example ever crossed the public block, bidding could spiral into the multi-million-dollar range. And that's where the $6 million figure comes from, not as fantasy, but as whispered estimates based on what elite collectors are willing to pay to own something unique. What makes the 2006 penny especially intoxicating is that it was released into general circulation, meaning it wasn't locked away in mint sets or special packaging. It was spent, dropped, saved, lost, and rediscovered. And that means the odds, however slim, are not zero that one could still be found by an everyday person. Imagine the psychological weight of that idea, the possibility that a coin in your change jar could be your exit from every financial worry you've ever had. Stories have already circulated of collectors pulling 2006 cents from bankrolls and noticing something off, only to later discover they were holding five or six-figure pieces. And while those weren't the million-dollar variety, they prove the principle that anomalies exist and rewards follow the observant. The reason collectors chase this coin so obsessively is not just money, but prestige, because owning a confirmed ultra-rare 2006 error cent would place you in an elite club so small it barely exists, and museums would beg to display it. Authentication is brutal, involving metallurgical analysis, die-state comparisons, and provenance tracking, but once passed, the coin transforms from pocket change into a financial weapon. Auctions thrive on drama, and rare pennies create some of the most intense bidding wars imaginable because they represent the ultimate underdog story, the idea that something so small and overlooked can dominate a room full of millionaires. Even now, collectors are scouring estate sales, inherited collections, and unopened mint rolls from 2006, hoping lightning strikes twice, and the fear of missing out drives prices higher every year. Ask yourself how many pennies you've ignored in your life, how many you've handed over without a glance, and then let that sink in, because this coin teaches a brutal lesson about attention and value. Before we move on, I want you to promise me something. Don't click away. Don't assume you've heard the best part yet, because later I'm going to hint at another 2006 penny from a different mint that carries its own shocking mystery, and the signs to look for might surprise you even more than this one. The emotional power of the 2006 1 cent lies in its accessibility, the idea that wealth isn't always locked behind glass or guarded by institutions. Sometimes it's disguised as the smallest unit of money we have, laughing at us as we spend it. This is why numismatics isn't just a hobby. It's a mindset, a way of seeing hidden stories and potential where others see nothing. As values climb and supplies remain virtually non-existent, the legend of the $6 million penny only grows stronger, feeding dreams and fueling searches worldwide. And if you think this is where the story peaks, hold on to that feeling, because the next coin from 2006, coming up after this, carries a twist that could make even this penny look tame. And once you hear about it, you'll never look at your change the same way again.